And we are joined right now by our senior international correspondent, George Thomas. George, thanks for joining us. And talk about the opposition right now. Does it have the numbers to actually force the president down?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, today's announcement by the world's most powerful nation and its head, the President of the United States, is a huge shot in the arm to the protesters. And clearly, they didn't have this momentum coming into this day. But today's announcement, as we see video that's happening there, that's taking place, the opposition forces have been hoping for this moment. Vice President Pence yesterday came out with a video addressing the Venezuelans. And today, with the backing of the United States of America, not just the U.S., Canada has just come out in the last few moments. The United Nations is calling also for a similar call. So this is a dramatic moment for Venezuela.
A lot of pressure. What do we know about how widespread the protests are and what the military is doing in response?
It's been massive across not just the Venezuelan capital of Caracas, but in smaller towns and villages across the South American nation. We have seen the protests and they're hoping the momentum. I mean, I'm sure the news of President Trump's announcement has coursed through the veins of this political demonstrations, and it's giving them the sort of fuel that's needed to continue and to keep this the demonstrations going. Keep in mind, as you mentioned in the intro, it was 61 years ago today, January 23rd, that the Venezuelans overthrew a military dictatorship. So dates are very, very significant in the life cycle of a nation, and it is all the more significant for this South American nation.
What are your thoughts on the White House really coming publicly behind the interim president, along with some other groups? Is that controversial, or is that the smart thing to do here?
Well, because the National Assembly is the most democratically elected political body in Venezuelan politics today. They see the election, the re-election of Maduro as illegitimate, that it was filled with corruption, filled with vote rigging. But the National Assembly, the folks went to the polls and they elected their officials. Constitutionally, Juan Guaido, the interim president today of Venezuela, who apparently just in the last few moments was sworn in, he has to hold elections, but he has the constitutional power in the absence of a president and a vice president. This is the right move, but he has made it very clear. He's told the Venezuelan people, this is an interim period. I will stand in this interim period and then hopefully have elections in the not too distant future.
So it sounds like the next 24, 48 hours are critical in terms of which way the country is going to go.
Absolutely, because as you have had these protests for the opposition, those for Maduro are also dueling it out. And I'm expecting that in the next 24 to 48 hours, we will see how Maduro responds. Let me make this very clear. There is the potential for incredible loss of life in the next 24 to 48 hours. It depends on how the military responds. My sense is that, in fact, just in the last few moments, reading the top general in the Venezuelan army send a note to all of the battalions across the country. Make sure that you are in charge of your battalions. Also, if you take to the streets, march peacefully with the people, which is very, very key, because the military in Venezuela is a powerful institution. And Maduro has, over the tenure of his presidency, has used the military, basically putting top generals in key positions within the government apparatus. And so he's tried to buy their influence, bribed them with these top positions. So how the military responds, not just to the new interim, not just to President Trump's announcement of his recognition of this interim leader, it's going to be very, very critical. Keep in mind, most people don't know this. Venezuela has the #1 most reserves of oil in the world, more so than Saudi Arabia. And just to imagine that a nation once so rich in this part of the hemisphere today is in total shambles, and people from the middle class to upper class to the folks at the bottom of the economic rung are absolutely fed up. They're fed up of the corruption, the rampant corruption, the political oppression, and they are asking for a change in the political. It is. Yeah, it really is.
It's stunning how
especially
quickly
keep in mind also, you know, this was once the nation of Hugo Chavez, and here we have, in essence, a potential regime change unfolding before our eyes.
Well, we're watching and praying. Thank you, George
Absolutely.
Thomas.